The world had never been kind to Mia Evans. Her life had been a constant cycle of pain, starting from the time she could walk. The bruises on her arms and legs faded with time, but the scars on her heart ran deep. Her family treated her like an outsider, a punching bag for their frustrations and insecurities. No matter how much she tried to earn their approval, it was never enough. Mia endured it all silently, her wolf whispering promises of salvation. "One day we'll find our mate," her wolf had said, her voice soft and hopeful. "He'll love us, protect us, and we'll finally have a home." That hope had been her anchor, the one thing that kept her going when life felt unbearable. When she turned 18, Mia's wolf awakened, and with it came the heightened senses of a shifter. She could smell the forest more vividly, hear the rustling of leaves from miles away, and feel the heartbeat of everyone around her. Most importantly, she could sense her mate. That fateful day arrived when she met Chase Cater. The pull was instantaneous, her heart racing as their eyes locked across the training grounds of the pack. He was tall, with dark hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through her. For a moment she thought her wolf's promise had come true. But then he spoke. "You?" Chase's voice dripped with disgust. He looked her up and down, his lip curling as if the sight of her was revolting. "There's no way you're my mate. The moon goddess must be joking." Mia's heart shattered. She stood frozen, her breath hitching as Chase turned to his friends and laughed, his cruel words echoing in her mind. "Why would I settle for this?" he sneered, gesturing toward her as though she were an object. "I reject you, Mia Evans. You're not worthy of me." The rejection hit her like a physical blow. Her wolf howled in agony, the pain of their bond being severed nearly bringing her to her knees. She felt small, insignificant, and utterly unloved. The laughter of Chase's friends echoed in her ears as she stumbled away, tears streaming down her face. She ran deep into the forest, desperate to escape the suffocating humiliation. That's where Jack found her. Jack was a rogue, a lone wolf who had been exiled from his pack years ago. He had always been kind to Mia, offering her a smile when no one else would. When he saw her crumpled on the forest floor, her body racked with sobs, he crouched beside her without a word. "Mia," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What happened?" Through choked sobs, Mia told him everything. Her family's abuse, her mate's rejection, and the unbearable weight of it all. Jack listened patiently, his golden brown eyes filled with quiet fury. "You don't have to stay here," Jack said firmly once she finished. "This pack doesn't deserve you. Come with me, Mia. We can leave this place and start over somewhere else." Mia hesitated. The idea of leaving everything behind terrified her. But what did she have to stay for? A family that hated her? A mate who had humiliated her? "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jack took her hand in his grip steady and reassuring. "You are stronger than you think, Mia. I see it in you. You've endured so much, but you don't have to do it alone anymore. Let me help you." His words stirred something inside her, a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. Slowly she nodded. That night, with nothing but the clothes on their backs, Mia and Jack slipped away from the pack under the cover of darkness. As they crossed the border, Mia felt a strange mix of fear and relief. For the first time in her life she was free. But as they ventured into the unknown, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that her past wasn't done with her yet. Somewhere deep inside she knew this was only the beginning. The journey to Silver Moon Pack was long and arduous, but it gave Mia time to process everything. She clung to Jack's steady presence as they navigated through dense forests and winding rivers, far away from the pack that had brought her nothing but pain. Jack, ever watchful, made sure they avoided patrols and rogues that might be lurking nearby. By the time they reached Silver Moon's territory, Mia's legs ached and exhaustion weighed heavy on her shoulders. The Silver Moon Pack was one of the most respected in the region, known for its fairness and unity. It was nothing like the chaos and cruelty she had left behind. But when they approached the border, it became clear that earning a place here wouldn't be easy. A patrol of warriors intercepted them, their imposing forms blocking the path. "State your purpose," one of the warriors growled, his sharp eyes flicking between Mia and Jack. "We're seeking refuge," Jack said calmly, stepping in front of Mia protectively. "She's been rejected by her mate and abused by her former pack. We're looking for a fresh start." The warriors exchanged glances, their expressions hard to read. Finally, one of them, a tall woman with a scar running down her cheek, stepped forward. Alpha Nathan will want to hear this, she said. Follow us, but don't try anything stupid. Mia's stomach churned with nerves as they were escorted to the pack's main house. The Silver Moon territory was beautiful, with sprawling meadows and cabins nestled between the trees. It felt like a sanctuary, but she knew it wasn't hers yet. They were brought before Alpha Nathan, a commanding man with dark hair streaked with gray and piercing blue eyes. His beta, a stern-looking woman named Lila, stood beside him. You've come a long way, Alpha Nathan said, his voice deep and calm. Why should we let you stay? Jack spoke first, his tone steady. Mia has suffered enough. She's strong, resilient, and willing to work for her place here. As for me, I'll leave if that's what it takes for her to be safe. Mia's chest tightened at Jack's words. He was willing to walk away from her safety just to give her a chance. Alpha Nathan studied them both, his gaze lingering on Mia. And you? What do you want? Mia swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his eyes. I want a chance to prove myself. I'll work hard, follow your rules, and contribute to your pack. I just want a place where I belong. The room was silent for a moment before the Alpha nodded. You can stay, but you'll start at the bottom. No special treatment. If you can prove your loyalty and worth, you'll earn your place here. As for you, he looked at Jack, you'll remain under close watch. Any trouble and you're out. Jack nodded without hesitation. Fair enough. Over the next few weeks, Mia threw herself into her new life. The tasks she was assigned were menial, cleaning the pack house, helping with food preparation, and assisting in the infirmary, but she didn't complain. She was determined to prove herself no matter how small the job. Though wary at first, some of the pack members began warming up to her. A young healer named Elena often chatted with her during their shifts in the infirmary, and an older warrior named Marcus offered her tips on strengthening her endurance. Jack, meanwhile, kept his distance from most of the pack, his rogue status making him an outsider. But he always found time to check in on Mia, encouraging her and reminding her of how far she had come. For the first time in her life, Mia felt a glimmer of hope. But her newfound peace was short-lived. One afternoon, while helping Elena organize medical supplies, Mia caught a familiar scent in the air, a mix of pine and something dark like smoldering embers. Her stomach twisted as the scent grew stronger, accompanied by the sound of voices in the packhouse entryway. Curiosity gave way to dread when she stepped out into the hall and saw him. Chase Cater. Her former mate stood there, his green eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. He smirked, the same cruel smirk that haunted her nightmares. Mia, he said, his voice smooth but laced with something sinister. I've been looking for you. Mia's heart raced as the past she had tried so hard to escape crashed back into her life. And he wasn't alone. A stunning woman with sharp features and flowing black hair stood beside him, her hand possessively resting on his arm. Layla. Chase's eyes glinted with malice as he took a step closer. Surprise. Mia's hard-won sanctuary was about to become her battlefield. Chapter 3. Unwanted. Couldn't quite read. Because I was wrong, he said softly, his voice almost regretful. You're my mate, Mia. I made a mistake and I'm trying to fix it. Mia's heart ached at his words, but her anger burned brighter. You don't get to decide that now. You made your choice and I'm making mine. Stay away from me, Chase. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. Later that night, Jack found Mia sitting on a log near the edge of the forest, staring into the distance. You okay? He asked, sitting beside her. Mia shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. Why can't he just let me be? I finally felt like I was healing and now he's here ruining everything. Jack reached for her hand, his grip warm and steady. He doesn't have power over you anymore, Mia. You've come so far and you're not the same person you were when he rejected you. You don't need him, or his approval. Mia looked at Jack, his words sinking in. He was right. Chase may have been her mate, but that didn't mean she had to let him control her life. Taking a deep breath, she wiped away her tears. I'm not going to let him win, Jack. I've worked too hard to let him ruin this for me. Jack smiled, his golden brown eyes filled with pride. That's the Mia I know. As the moonlight filtered through the trees, Mia felt a renewed sense of determination. Chase may have followed her here, but she wasn't the weak, broken girl he had rejected. She was stronger now and she would prove it. To him, to the pack, and most importantly, to herself. Mia stood frozen in the hallway, Chase's smirk cutting through her like a blade. Her mind raced as memories of his rejection came flooding back. The humiliation, the heartbreak, the endless nights spent crying in the dark. She had left that life behind, or so she thought. "What are you doing here?" Mia demanded, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound strong. Chase took a leisurely step forward, ignoring the pack members who had begun to gather around, their curiosity piqued by the tension. "I could ask you the same thing, Mia. Imagine my surprise when I heard you were here, starting a new life in my pack." "Your pack?" Mia echoed, her stomach churning. Layla scoffed, tightening her grip on Chase's arm. "That's right. Chase is here to take on the beta role. We've moved up in the world, unlike some people who run away from their problems." Mia's wolf stirred angrily, but she forced herself to remain calm. She wouldn't let them see how much their presence affected her. "Silver Moon isn't your pack," a voice cut through the tension. Mia turned to see Elena, the young healer who had been kind to her since she arrived. Her expression was firm, her gaze locked on Layla. "And here everyone earns their place. Even you." Layla sneered but didn't respond. Chase, however, seemed amused. "I'll earn my place," he said smoothly, his eyes flicking back to Mia. "But it's good to know you're here, Mia. We have unfinished business." Mia's heart sank. She had hoped to leave her past behind, but it seemed Chase wasn't willing to let her go. That evening, Mia sat in the small room she shared with Jack, her hands trembling as she recounted the encounter. Jack listened silently, his jaw clenched and his eyes dark with anger. "Why is he here, Jack?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why won't he just leave me alone?" Jack placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He's here because he's a coward, Mia. He knows he made a mistake and now he wants to control you again. But you're stronger than that. You've built something here and he can't take that away from you." Mia nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. Chase had always had a way of getting under her skin, and his presence threatened to unravel the progress she had made. Over the next few days, Chase made his presence known. He strutted through the pack like he owned it, charming some with his confidence while others remained wary. Layla, meanwhile, seemed determined to remind Mia of her place, throwing snide comments her way whenever they crossed paths. But what unnerved Mia the most was Chase's fixation on her. He sought her out at every opportunity, his words laced with subtle threats and manipulations. "You can't ignore me forever, Mia," he said one afternoon when they were alone in the packhouse kitchen. "You know our bond isn't gone. You'll come back to me eventually." Mia's hands clenched into fists. "You rejected me, Chase. You made it clear I wasn't good enough for you. So why can't you leave me alone now?" Chase's smirk faded, replaced by a look she couldn't quite read. "Because I was wrong," he said softly, his voice almost regretful. "You're my mate, Mia. I made a mistake and I'm trying to fix it." Mia's heart ached at his words, but her anger burned brighter. "You don't get to decide that now. You made your choice and I'm making mine. Stay away from me, Chase." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. Later that night, Jack found Mia sitting on a log near the edge of the forest, staring into the distance. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. Mia shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "Why can't he just let me be? I finally felt like I was healing and now he's here ruining everything." Jack reached for her hand, his grip warm and steady. "He doesn't have power over you anymore, Mia. You've come so far and you're not the same person you were when he rejected you. You don't need him, or his approval." Mia looked at Jack, his words sinking in. He was right. Chase may have been her mate, but that didn't mean she had to let him control her life. Taking a deep breath, she wiped away her tears. "I'm not going to let him win, Jack. I've worked too hard to let him ruin this for me." Jack smiled, his golden brown eyes filled with pride. "That's the Mia I know." As the moonlight filtered through the trees, Mia felt a renewed sense of determination. Chase may have followed her here, but she wasn't the weak, broken girl he had rejected. She was stronger now and she would prove it, to him, to the pack, and most importantly, to herself. Mia's resolve to stand her ground was put to the test sooner than she anticipated. Alpha Nathan announced a pack training competition. A week-long series of challenges meant to test strength, endurance, and strategy. It was a way for pack members to prove their worth and earn recognition, but for Mia, it was more than that. It was an opportunity to show Chase, Layla, and everyone else in the pack that she wasn't the broken girl they thought she was. On the morning of the first challenge, the training grounds buzzed with energy. Wolves of all ranks gathered, the air thick with anticipation. Mia stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding. She could feel Chase's eyes on her from across the field, but she refused to look his way. Jack nudged her shoulder. "You've got this," he said, his voice steady. Mia nodded, her determination hardening. "I'm ready." The first challenge was a grueling obstacle course designed to test physical endurance. The course was filled with towering walls to climb, mud pits to crawl through, and heavy logs to carry. Mia's muscles burned as she pushed herself through the course, but she didn't stop. Chase, of course, breezed through the obstacles, his speed and strength drawing murmurs of admiration from the crowd. But Mia focused on her own path, ignoring the whispers and the occasional sneer from Layla. By the end of the course, Mia was drenched in sweat and covered in mud, but she crossed the finish line with her head held high. She hadn't finished first, but she hadn't finished last either. As she caught her breath, Elena approached her with a water bottle and a wide smile. "You did amazing, Mia," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Mia managed a small smile in return, grateful for Elena's support. The second challenge tested teamwork. The participants were divided into groups and tasked with capturing a flag from a guarded fortress deep in the forest. Mia found herself paired with Marcus, the seasoned warrior, and a young scout named Leo. Their strategy was simple. Marcus would create a distraction while Mia and Leo sneaked into the fortress to retrieve the flag. It wasn't without its risks, but they worked together seamlessly, their combined efforts earning them a victory. Chase's team also succeeded, and he made sure to flaunt his triumph every chance he got. Well, he said as he passed Mia later that evening. "Looks like you're not completely useless after all." Mia clenched her fists, refusing to take the bait. She wouldn't let him drag her down. By the time the final challenge arrived, Mia's body ached, but her spirit remained unbroken. The last trial was a one-on-one combat match, a test of strength and strategy that would determine the overall winner of the competition. The matches were drawn randomly, and when Mia's name was called, her stomach twisted. She stepped into the arena, her heart pounding as the crowd fell silent. Then the name of her opponent was announced. Chase Cater. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as Chase stepped into the arena, his smirk firmly in place. "Looks like we finally get to settle things," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Mia's wolf growled in her mind, urging her to fight. She squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "I'm not afraid of you, Chase." The match began with the sharp blow of a whistle. Chase lunged first, his movements quick and calculated. Mia dodged, her instincts guiding her as she countered with a series of strikes. The crowd roared as the two clashed, their battle fierce and unrelenting. Chase was stronger, but Mia was faster, her agility allowing her to evade his more brutal attacks. As the fight wore on, Mia's strength began to waver, but she refused to back down. This wasn't just a match, it was her chance to reclaim her power. With one final burst of energy, Mia ducked beneath Chase's swing and delivered a powerful blow to his side, sending him stumbling. The crowd erupted in cheers as Chase hit the ground, his smirk replaced with a look of shock. Mia stood over him, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. For the first time she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected, respect mingled with anger. Alpha Nathan stepped forward, his voice booming. "The winner, Mia Evans." The crowd cheered louder, and Mia felt a surge of pride unlike anything she had ever known. She had done it. She had faced Chase, the man who had once rejected her, and proven that she was more than he could ever have imagined. As she walked away from the arena, Jack met her with a proud grin. "That was incredible," he said, clapping her on the back. Mia smiled, her heart light for the first time in days. But as she glanced back at Chase, who was still sitting in the dirt, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. Mia's resolve to stand her ground was put to the test sooner than she anticipated. Alpha Nathan announced a pack training competition. A week-long series of challenges meant to test strength, endurance, and strategy. It was a way for pack members to prove their worth and earn recognition, but for Mia, it was more than that. It was an opportunity to show Chase, Layla, and everyone else in the pack that she wasn't the broken girl they thought she was. On the morning of the first challenge, the training grounds buzzed with energy. Wolves of all ranks gathered, the air thick with anticipation. Mia stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding. She could feel Chase's eyes on her from across the field, but she refused to look his way. Jack nudged her shoulder. "You've got this," he said, his voice steady. Mia nodded, her determination hardening. "I'm ready." The first challenge was a grueling obstacle course designed to test physical endurance. The course was filled with towering walls to climb, mud pits to crawl through, and heavy logs to carry. Mia's muscles burned as she pushed herself through the course, but she didn't stop. Chase, of course, breezed through the obstacles, his speed and strength drawing murmurs of admiration from the crowd. But Mia focused on her own path, ignoring the whispers and the occasional sneer from Layla. By the end of the course, Mia was drenched in sweat and covered in mud, but she crossed the finish line with her head held high. She hadn't finished first, but she hadn't finished last either. As she caught her breath, Elena approached her with a water bottle and a wide smile. "You did amazing, Mia," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Mia managed a small smile in return, grateful for Elena's support. The second challenge tested teamwork. The participants were divided into groups and tasked with capturing a flag from a guarded fortress deep in the forest. Mia found herself paired with Marcus, the seasoned warrior, and a young scout named Leo. Their strategy was simple. Marcus would create a distraction while Mia and Leo sneaked into the fortress to retrieve the flag. It wasn't without its risks, but they worked together seamlessly, their combined efforts earning them a victory. Chase's team also succeeded, and he made sure to flaunt his triumph every chance he got. Well, he said as he passed Mia later that evening. "Looks like you're not completely useless after all." Mia clenched her fists, refusing to take the bait. She wouldn't let him drag her down. By the time the final challenge arrived, Mia's body ached, but her spirit remained unbroken. The last trial was a one-on-one combat match, a test of strength and strategy that would determine the overall winner of the competition. The matches were drawn randomly, and when Mia's name was called, her stomach twisted. She stepped into the arena, her heart pounding as the crowd fell silent. Then the name of her opponent was announced. Chase Cater. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as Chase stepped into the arena, his smirk firmly in place. "Looks like we finally get to settle things," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Mia's wolf growled in her mind, urging her to fight. She squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "I'm not afraid of you, Chase." The match began with the sharp blow of a whistle. Chase lunged first, his movements quick and calculated. Mia dodged, her instincts guiding her as she countered with a series of strikes. The crowd roared as the two clashed, their battle fierce and unrelenting. Chase was stronger, but Mia was faster, her agility allowing her to evade his more brutal attacks. As the fight wore on, Mia's strength began to waver, but she refused to back down. This wasn't just a match. It was her chance to reclaim her power. With one final burst of energy, Mia ducked beneath Chase's swing and delivered a powerful blow to his side, sending him stumbling. The crowd erupted in cheers as Chase hit the ground, his smirk replaced with a look of shock. Mia stood over him, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. For the first time she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected, respect mingled with anger. Alpha Nathan stepped forward, his voice booming. "The winner, Mia Evans." The crowd cheered louder, and Mia felt a surge of pride unlike anything she had ever known. She had done it. She had faced Chase, the man who had once rejected her, and proven that she was more than he could ever have imagined. As she walked away from the arena, Jack met her with a proud grin. "That was incredible," he said, clapping her on the back. Mia smiled, her heart light for the first time in days. But as she glanced back at Chase, who was still sitting in the dirt, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. The aftermath of the combat match sent ripples through the Silver Moon pack. Mia's victory over Chase was the talk of the pack, and for the first time she felt the eyes of others on her, not out of pity or curiosity but admiration. Yet as the days passed, Mia noticed a change in Chase. The cocky, self-assured smirk he always wore was replaced by a brooding intensity. He kept his distance, but his gaze lingered on her during training sessions and pack meetings. It wasn't just anger. There was something else in his expression, something she couldn't quite place. Layla, on the other hand, grew more venomous. She went out of her way to humiliate Mia, hurling snide remarks whenever they crossed paths. "Enjoy your moment, Mia," Layla sneered one morning in the training grounds. "It won't last. You're nothing but a rejected little mutt clinging to scraps of attention." Mia ignored her, focusing on her training. She had learned that Layla's words only had power if she let them. One evening, after a long day of chores and training, Mia retreated to the quiet clearing she had discovered near the edge of the forest. It had become her sanctuary, a place where she could gather her thoughts and find peace. But tonight, the peace was shattered when Chase appeared, stepping into the clearing without warning. Mia stiffened, her wolf bristling. "What do you want, Chase?" she asked, keeping her voice calm despite the tension in the air. Chase didn't answer immediately. He stood there, his hands shoved into his pockets, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke. "You've changed," he said, his voice low. "You're not the same girl I rejected." Mia crossed her arms. "That's what happens when you survive the things I've been through." Chase took a step closer and Mia fought the urge to back away. "I made a mistake, Mia," he admitted, his green eyes locking onto hers. "Rejecting you was the worst decision of my life. I didn't see your worth then, but I see it now." Mia's chest tightened. There had been a time when she would have given anything to hear those words, but now they felt hollow. "It's too late, Chase," she said firmly. "You don't get to come back into my life and act like nothing happened. You rejected me. You broke me. And I rebuilt myself without you." Chase flinched as though her words had physically struck him. "I know I hurt you," he said. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me. Just give me a chance." Mia shook her head, her voice steady. "I don't owe you anything, Chase. You had your chance and you threw it away. I've moved on." As she turned to leave, Chase reached out, his hand brushing her arm. "You might not believe me, but I do care about you, Mia. And I'll prove it." Mia pulled away, her heart pounding. "Prove it to yourself, Chase. I don't need it." The encounter left Mia shaken, but she refused to let it derail her progress. She focused on her duties, her training, and the friendships she was beginning to form within the pack. Jack remained her anchor, his unwavering support a constant source of strength. But the storm brewing with Chase wasn't over. A week later, chaos erupted in the Silver Moon territory. A rogue attack caught the pack off guard, forcing everyone to spring into action. Mia joined the fight alongside Jack and Marcus, her wolf's instincts taking over as they defended the pack from the intruders. The battle was brutal, but Silver Moon was strong and the rogues were eventually driven back. In the aftermath, as the pack regrouped and tended to the injured, Mia noticed Chase watching her again. This time his expression wasn't one of arrogance or guilt. It was something deeper, something that made her chest ache despite herself. Later that night, Alpha Nathan called a meeting in the pack house to discuss the attack. Chase stood to speak, his voice firm as he outlined a plan to strengthen their defenses. For the first time, Mia saw a glimpse of the leader Chase could be. And she hated that a small part of her still cared. As the meeting ended and the pack began to disperse, Mia lingered near the back of the room, lost in thought. Jack approached her, his brow furrowed. "You okay?" he asked. Mia sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know. Chase, he's different. But I don't know if I can ever trust him again." Jack's jaw tightened. "You don't have to decide that now, Mia. Take your time. You've already proven you're stronger without him." Mia nodded, grateful for Jack's support. But as she glanced across the room and met Chase's eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that her story with him wasn't over. Not yet. The rogue attack left the pack on edge. Patrols were doubled, and the atmosphere in the Silver Moon pack was thick with tension. Alpha Nathan called for a strict lockdown, ensuring no one wandered far from the pack's borders without proper escort. Mia threw herself into her responsibilities, helping wherever she could. She worked with Elena in the infirmary, tended to injured wolves, and trained harder than ever. But the unease lingered, gnawing at the edges of her mind. And then came the whispers. The patrols began reporting strange movements near the borders. Shadows flitting through the trees, the faint scent of unfamiliar wolves. Whoever the rogues were, they weren't done. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia found herself near the edge of the forest, helping Jack repair a damaged section of the border fence. The two worked in silence, the sounds of nature filling the air. "Do you think they'll come back?" Mia asked quietly, her hands gripping the wire tightly. Jack glanced at her, his expression serious. Rogues don't give up easily. But we'll be ready if they do. Mia nodded, though a chill ran down her spine. She hated feeling vulnerable, especially now that she had finally begun to rebuild her life. Suddenly, the faint snap of a twig broke the stillness. Both Mia and Jack froze, their wolves alert. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered. Jack nodded, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the tree-line. "Stay behind me." But before they could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. A rogue, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Run, Mia." Jack growled, shifting into his wolf form in an instant. Mia's wolf surged forward, urging her to fight, but she hesitated. She wasn't afraid of the rogue, she was afraid of losing Jack. The rogue lunged and Jack met him head-on, the two wolves clashing in a blur of teeth and claws. Mia shifted, her wolf snarling as she circled the fight, looking for an opening. More rogues emerged from the forest, their numbers overwhelming. Mia fought fiercely, her wolf's instincts guiding her movements as she took down one attacker after another. But it wasn't enough. Just when the battle seemed hopeless, a familiar scent filled the air: Chase. He and a group of warriors burst onto the scene, their presence turning the tide. Chase shifted mid-air, his powerful wolf tearing through the rogues with brutal efficiency. The battle was over in minutes, the remaining rogues retreating into the forest. Mia, panting and bloodied, shifted back into her human form. Chase approached her, his expression a mix of concern and fury. "What were you thinking coming out here without backup?" he demanded. Mia bristled, her exhaustion feeding her anger. "I wasn't alone, Chase. Jack and I were handling it." "Handling it?" Chase scoffed. "You could have been killed." "I can take care of myself," Mia snapped. Chase's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he glanced at Jack, who was nursing a deep gash on his shoulder. "You're lucky we got here in time," he muttered. Mia clenched her fists, refusing to let his words undermine her. "We didn't ask for your help." Chase's gaze softened, his voice lowering. "Maybe not, but you needed it." Mia turned away, unable to meet his eyes. He hated that he was right. Later that night, as the pack regrouped and the injured were tended to, Mia found herself alone in the infirmary. She cleaned her wounds in silence, her thoughts swirling. Chase had saved her, again. But his presence complicated everything. When Jack joined her, his shoulder freshly bandaged, he gave her a knowing look. "You okay?" Mia nodded, though her chest felt heavy. "I hate feeling helpless," she admitted. "You're not helpless, Mia," Jack said firmly. "You held your own out there. And you've proven time and time again how strong you are." Mia managed a small smile, but her mind kept drifting back to Chase. His words, his actions, his unwavering presence. It all left her feeling more conflicted than ever. As the moon rose high in the sky, Mia made a silent vow. The rogues may have brought chaos to her new home, but she wouldn't let fear control her. She would fight for her place, for her pack, and for herself. And she would figure out what to do about Chase. Eventually. The rogue attack left the Silver Moon pack shaken but not broken. Patrols doubled, and Alpha Nathan demanded a strategy meeting with the strongest warriors, including Chase and Marcus. Despite the chaos, the pack rallied together, strengthening their bonds and preparing for the inevitable return of their enemies. Mia, however, couldn't shake the turmoil inside her. Chase's growing presence in her life unsettled her. Every interaction with him brought a storm of emotions: anger, confusion, and an unwelcome flicker of something she wasn't ready to admit. As she trained harder than ever, her wolf became restless. It wasn't just about Chase. The rogue's attack had awakened something primal in her, a need to protect and to prove herself. A few days after the attack, Mia found herself paired with Chase during a sparring session. She tried to object, but Alpha Nathan insisted. "You've proven your strength, Mia," he said. "Now prove you can work with him." Chase smirked as they squared off in the training ring. "Try not to hit me too hard, Evans." Mia rolled her eyes but didn't respond. She focused on the match, blocking out the murmurs of the crowd. Chase was fast, his movements fluid and calculated. But Mia was quicker, her agility forcing him to stay on the defensive. As they exchanged blows, she noticed something unusual in his fighting style. He was holding back. "Stop going easy on me, Chase," she snapped, her voice sharp. Chase hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "I'm not." Mia didn't let him finish. She lunged forward, her movements precise and aggressive. Chase barely managed to block her strikes, his smirk fading as he realized she wasn't playing around. When the match ended in a stalemate, the crowd erupted in applause. Mia stepped out of the ring, her chest heaving. "You've got fire," Chase said, following her. "I like that." Mia shot him a glare. "Save your compliments for someone who cares." But as she walked away, she couldn't ignore the way her wolf stirred at his words. That evening, Mia joined Jack and Elena in the pack house common room. The three of them sat by the fire, discussing the pack's plans to strengthen their defenses. Jack leaned closer, his voice low. "I've been hearing whispers about a traitor in the pack." Mia frowned. "A traitor? Are you sure?" Elena nodded, her expression grim. "It makes sense. How else would the rogues know when and where to attack?" The thought sent a chill down Mia's spine. The idea of someone within the pack betraying them was almost too much to bear. "Do you have any idea who it could be?" Mia asked. Jack shook his head. "Not yet. But we need to be careful." Mia's mind raced as she considered the implications. If there was a traitor, they could be anyone, even someone she trusted. The next day, Mia decided to take a walk to clear her head. She wandered through the forest, her wolf alert as she moved deeper into the trees. The air was crisp, the scent of pine and earth grounding her. But her peace was shattered when she heard voices nearby. Creeping closer, Mia crouched behind a cluster of bushes, her heart pounding. She recognized the voices, Layla and a stranger. "You promised me results," the stranger growled, his tone menacing. "The Alpha's defenses are stronger than ever, and your information has been useless." Layla's voice was laced with desperation. "I'm trying. But the pack is on high alert. It's not easy to get what you need." Mia's blood ran cold. Layla was the traitor. Before she could react, a branch snapped beneath her foot. The sound was faint but enough to draw the attention of the rogue and Layla. Layla's eyes widened when she saw Mia. "You?" Mia didn't wait for her to finish. She shifted into her wolf form and bolted, her heart racing as she heard footsteps behind her. The rogue chased her through the forest, his snarls growing louder. Mia pushed herself to run faster, her wolf's instincts guiding her through the trees. Just when she thought she might be caught, a blur of fur slammed into the rogue, knocking him to the ground. "Chase." He shifted back to his human form, his eyes blazing with fury. "Go, Mia. Get back to the pack house." Mia hesitated, but the look in Chase's eyes left no room for argument. She turned and ran, her heart hammering as she raced back to safety. When Mia burst into the pack house, she found Alpha, Nathan and Jack in the main hall. "There's a traitor," she gasped. "It's Layla. I overheard her talking to a rogue." Alpha Nathan's expression darkened, his wolf barely contained. "Where is she now?" "She's still in the forest," Mia said. Chase stayed behind to deal with the rogue. Nathan nodded, issuing swift orders to the warriors. As they moved out, Jack placed a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder. "You did the right thing, Mia," he said. But as she stood there waiting for news, Mia couldn't shake the fear that this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. The air in the pack house buzzed with tension as Alpha Nathan led a team of warriors into the forest to apprehend Layla and any remaining rogues. Mia paced the main hall, her mind replaying the confrontation she had overheard. Jack leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "You need to calm down, Mia. Chase can handle himself." Mia stopped and turned to face him. "It's not just about Chase. Layla's betrayal cuts deeper than we realized. She's been feeding them information for weeks, maybe longer. Who knows how much damage she's already done?" Jack nodded, his expression grim. "We'll figure it out. And Layla will pay for what she's done." But Mia couldn't shake the knot of worry in her chest. She hated feeling helpless, and waiting for answers only made it worse. Hours later, the front doors of the pack house burst open, and Alpha Nathan strode in with Chase and the warriors close behind. Layla was dragged in between two warriors, her hands bound and her face pale. The entire pack gathered in the main hall, their murmurs filling the air as they stared at the disgraced wolf. Nathan raised his hand for silence. His voice was cold and commanding as he spoke. "Layla has betrayed this pack. She has been working with rogues, providing them with information about our patrols and defenses. Because of her actions, lives have been put at risk." Layla's head snapped up, her eyes darting around the room. "I had no choice," she cried. "They threatened me. They said they'd kill me if I didn't help them. Mia stepped forward, her voice steady and filled with anger. Don't lie, Layla. I heard you. You weren't being threatened, you were making deals. Layla glared at Mia, her expression twisting into a sneer. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Just because you survived being rejected and came back stronger. But you're nothing. You don't belong here. Mia took a step closer, her wolf pushing to the surface. I've earned my place here, Layla. And I'll fight to protect this pack from people like you. Nathan's voice cut through the tension. Enough. Layla will face judgment for her actions. She will be detained until a decision is made. The warriors hauled Layla away, her screams echoing through the pack house. After the crowd dispersed, Chase approached Mia. He looked tired, his face smudged with dirt and his clothes torn from the fight. You did good, he said, his voice softer than usual. If you hadn't overheard her, things could have gotten a lot worse. Mia crossed her arms, her defenses rising. I didn't do it for you, Chase. I did it for the pack. Chase nodded, a flicker of hurt crossing his face before he masked it. I know. But still thank you. Mia sighed, the weight of the day pressing down on her. I just want this to be over. I'm tired of fighting battles that shouldn't exist. Chase took a step closer, his green eyes searching hers. You're stronger than you think, Mia. And no matter what happens, you're not alone in this. For a moment, Mia let herself believe him. But the walls she had built around her heart refused to crumble. Later that night, Mia sat by the fire in the pack house common room, staring into the flames. Jack joined her, a cup of tea in his hands. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle. Mia shrugged. I don't know. I feel like no matter how far I run, the past keeps catching up with me. Jack frowned. You're not running anymore, Mia. You're standing your ground. And you've got people who have your back. Mia looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thanks, Jack. I don't know what I'd do without you. Jack smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes that Mia couldn't quite place. The next morning, the pack gathered in the courtyard as Alpha Nathan announced Layla's punishment. She will be exiled, he declared, his voice carrying through the crowd. Let this be a lesson to anyone who would betray their pack. We are stronger together and we will not tolerate treachery. Layla was escorted out of the territory, her pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. As Mia watched her former rival disappear into the forest, she felt a mixture of relief and unease. The immediate threat was gone, but the rogues were still out there and she knew this was far from over. Mia turned to Jack, who stood beside her. This isn't the end, is it? Jack shook his head. No. It's just the beginning. And as Mia looked out at the pack, the family she had fought to protect, she realized he was right. The days following Layla's exile were tense but filled with a new sense of unity in the pack. Despite the betrayal, there was a quiet resolve among the wolves. They knew they had to stay strong for themselves and for each other. But while the Silver Moon pack was trying to rebuild, a storm was brewing, one that none of them were prepared for. Mia had found herself sinking into a strange rhythm. The threat of the rogues still loomed, but it was more than just the enemy in the forest that kept her up at night. It was the underlying tension with Chase. Every time their paths crossed, a storm of emotions swirled inside her. Anger, longing, confusion. She couldn't deny the pull between them, but she refused to let it control her. One evening, as dusk settled over the pack house, Mia found herself wandering the training grounds. She needed to clear her head. The past few weeks had been a blur. Constant patrols, the lingering fear of another rogue attack, and the pressure of proving herself. She wasn't surprised when she found Chase there, his silhouette cast against the setting sun as he practiced with a sparring partner. His movements were fluid, graceful, but with a dangerous edge. Watching him, Mia couldn't help but remember the way his wolf had fought alongside hers during the rogue attack. As if sensing her presence, Chase stopped and turned, his eyes locking onto hers. A small smile tugged at his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mia, he greeted her, his voice low. Mia stiffened but approached anyway. What are you doing out here? Training. What else? Chase answered, but his gaze lingered on her. Mia's heart raced, but she fought to keep her composure. You're always training. You're going to burn yourself out. Chase chuckled, but the sound was laced with tension. And what's wrong with that? Better to be ready than caught off guard again. Mia shifted uncomfortably. I get it, okay? She glanced away, her frustration bubbling to the surface. But you can't keep pushing everyone away, Chase. You need to talk to people, trust them. You're not alone in this fight. Chase's expression darkened and he took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. What do you know about being alone, Mia? He asked, his tone sharper than she expected. Mia felt her pulse quicken, but she refused to back down. I know what it's like to be rejected, to feel like there's no place for you. But that doesn't mean I'm going to push people away. I have a pack now and I'm not letting it fall apart because of my pride. Chase stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, as if something shifted within him, he exhaled sharply and looked away. I don't need your pity, Mia, he said quietly, though his words were far from cold. I'm just trying to protect everyone. Protect you? Mia's chest tightened. You don't have to protect me. I'm not some fragile wolf you need to shield. Before Chase could respond, the sound of footsteps interrupted them. Jack approached, his eyes narrowing as he took in the tension between them. Everything okay? Jack asked, his voice low but carrying a weight of concern. Mia glanced at him, then back at Chase. Yeah. Just talking. Jack looked from Mia to Chase, sensing the undercurrent of frustration. He hesitated but then gave a small nod. Well, if you two are done. Alpha Nathan needs to see you, Mia. Mia frowned, but she turned to Chase one last time. We'll finish this conversation later. Chase didn't answer, but his gaze followed her as she walked away. When Mia reached Alpha Nathan's office, she was surprised to find not only Nathan but Marcus, the pack's beta, waiting for her. The air in the room was heavy with seriousness, and Mia felt her stomach twist with unease. Sit, Mia, Nathan gestured, his face taut with concern. Mia sat down, glancing at Marcus before meeting Nathan's eyes. What's going on? Nathan exchanged a look with Marcus before speaking. We've gotten reports from the border patrols. The rogues are regrouping. They're planning something bigger this time. Mia's blood ran cold. How do we know they're planning an attack? Marcus leaned forward, his voice grim. We've seen signs, unusual movements, more wolves on the outskirts of our territory, and a message from their leader. He paused as if deciding how much to share. They're targeting the pack's strongest defenses, starting with the Alpha. Mia's heart thudded painfully in her chest. You're saying they want to take Nathan down? Nathan nodded, his jaw set with determination. It's not just about me. They're coming after everything. Our resources, our people. They know that if they break our defenses, they can tear us apart. Mia's thoughts raced. The Silver Moon pack was strong, but could they really hold off an all-out attack from a group of rogues willing to do anything to take them down? What do you need me to do? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Nathan stood and walked over to the window, staring out at the darkening horizon. We need every warrior ready. I've already sent out orders for increased patrols, but we need a more strategic defense. I want you to help train the new recruits, show them what you've learned. We need everyone sharp and prepared. Mia nodded. I can do that. Marcus spoke next, his voice serious. And Mia, we also need you to stay alert. If the rogues want to break us from the inside, they might try something unexpected. Watch your back. Mia nodded again, her mind whirling with the weight of the task ahead. There was no turning back now. As Mia left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that the pack was on the brink of something far worse than they had anticipated. But she couldn't afford to dwell on it. There were preparations to be made, and she wasn't going to let the rogues destroy everything she had fought for. She headed straight to the training grounds, her thoughts divided between the attack and the unresolved tension with Chase. The pack's survival was her priority now, but deep down she knew the storm between them was far from over. The next few days were a blur of preparation. The Silver Moon pack worked tirelessly, organizing defensive positions, reinforcing patrols and training the younger wolves. Mia threw herself into her work, determined to keep her mind occupied and her focus sharp. Every time her thoughts drifted to Chase or the upcoming battle, she snapped them back, unwilling to let the turmoil distract her. But even amidst the chaos, a quiet tension simmered between her and the rest of the pack. The rogue's threat had become too real to ignore. Whispers filled the halls and the older wolves spoke in hushed tones about what might come next. Mia could feel it in the air, the unease that settled like a heavy fog over the entire pack. One evening, as Mia finished a long training session with the recruits, she found herself walking alone through the pack house courtyard. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over everything. She needed a moment of solitude, away from the constant rush of responsibility. But before she could find peace, she saw him. Chase was standing near the edge of the courtyard, his broad shoulders hunched as he stared into the distance. He looked lost, his usual confident demeanor replaced with something darker, more vulnerable. Mia stopped in her tracks, unsure if she should approach. But the distance between them felt unbearable, and before she knew it, she was walking toward him. "Chase," she called softly, unsure of what to say. He turned, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something. Something raw, something broken. His expression softened, but only slightly. "Mia." His voice was hoarse, as though he hadn't spoken in hours. "What's going on with us?" Mia's heart skipped a beat. The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She wasn't prepared to answer it, not when everything was so uncertain. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know what's going on. I thought we could just focus on the pack. On surviving this." Chase shook his head, his jaw clenched tightly. "It's more than that, Mia. It always has been. I've tried to push it away, push you away, but it's not working." Mia's breath caught in her throat. The pain, the frustration, the longing, everything that had been building up between them erupted in that moment. "You're not the only one trying to push things away, Chase," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I've been through enough to know that I can't let my emotions get in the way. Not now, not when we're so close to losing everything." Chase took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "But what if we're losing each other in the process?" Mia swallowed, her chest tightening. She wanted to reach out to close the distance between them, but the walls she had built were too strong. She couldn't let herself fall for him, not now, not when the world around them was crumbling. "I don't know what we are anymore, Chase," she whispered, her voice breaking. Before he could respond, the sound of footsteps approaching broke the moment. They both turned to see Marcus walking toward them, his face serious. "Mia, Alpha Nathan wants to see you," Marcus said, his eyes flicking between her and Chase. Chase's expression darkened, but he nodded curtly. "I'll see you later," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia didn't say anything as she turned to follow Marcus. Her heart felt heavy, the weight of the unspoken words between her and Chase pressing down on her like a storm waiting to break. When they reached Alpha Nathan's office, Mia was met with an urgency she hadn't expected. Nathan was pacing, his face grim, his eyes darkened with concern. "Sit, Mia," he ordered, his voice low but filled with tension. Mia sat, feeling the unease settle in her stomach. "What's going on?" Nathan paused for a moment, his eyes scanning her face as though weighing something. Finally he spoke. "We've intercepted a message from the rogues." Mia leaned forward, her pulse quickening. "What does it say?" Nathan tossed a folded piece of paper onto the table. "They're planning an attack. But not on us, not yet." Mia's confusion deepened as she unfolded the paper. It was a simple note, written in jagged, hasty handwriting. "We know where she is. The time will come. The moon will witness it." Mia's eyes narrowed. "Who are they talking about?" Nathan's expression hardened. "You." Mia felt her blood run cold. "Me?" Nathan nodded, his jaw clenched. "They've been watching you. You're the key to breaking us. They think if they can take you out, they'll weaken our defenses." The weight of his words hit Mia like a punch to the gut. She had always known the rogues were dangerous, but she hadn't realized how far they would go to destroy the pack. "You're in danger, Mia," Nathan continued. "I'm putting you under protection. No one goes near you without my say-so." Mia's eyes flashed with defiance. "I'm not some helpless pup you can hide away. I'll fight with the pack just like everyone else." Nathan sighed, clearly frustrated. "This isn't a request, Mia. You're a target now, and I need you to stay safe so we can focus on the bigger fight." Mia opened her mouth to argue, but the weight of the situation was starting to sink in. She had been fighting so hard to prove herself, to show she was more than just a survivor. But now the reality was setting in. Her presence had become a threat. As she stood to leave, Nathan added, "I'm counting on you, Mia. Don't let your guard down." Mia nodded, but the words felt empty in her ears. She wasn't afraid of the rogues. She wasn't afraid of anything. But the more she thought about what Nathan had said, the more she realized just how much was at stake. Later that evening, as Mia prepared for another round of training, she found herself alone in the courtyard again. But this time Chase wasn't there. The weight of everything that had happened, both with the rogues and between them, felt overwhelming. But before she could get lost in her thoughts, she heard the soft crunch of footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Jack approaching. His face was serious, but there was a softness in his eyes. "Hey," he greeted her quietly. "You okay?" Mia shrugged, not trusting her voice to hold steady. "I don't know anymore." Jack stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Whatever happens, Mia, we're all here for you. You don't have to carry this alone." Mia looked up at him, her throat tight with emotion. The weight of the coming battle, the fear of losing everything, was suffocating. "I know," she whispered. "I just don't know if we're ready for what's coming." Jack offered her a small, reassuring smile. "We'll fight, Mia. Together." And for the first time in a long time, Mia believed him. The tension in the pack had reached a breaking point. Every corner of the Silver Moon pack seemed charged with an undercurrent of fear and anticipation. The full moon was just days away, and with it the promise of a battle that would determine the pack's future. Yet, amid the chaos and preparation, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play, something that went beyond just the rogue threat. The day had been long: training, patrols, strategy meetings, and as the evening wore on, Mia found herself standing on the balcony of the pack house, staring out into the woods. The trees stretched endlessly before her, dark and silent. There was an eerie calm to the world beyond the pack's borders, a stillness that made her uneasy. Chase's words from the night before echoed in her mind. What if we're losing each other in the process? She had tried to bury the raw emotions they had both felt, but they lingered, unresolved. Every time she thought she could focus solely on the pack's survival, the pull between them resurfaced, challenging her sense of duty and her heart. "Mia?" A voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to find Jack standing behind her, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the lanterns inside. He looked concerned, but there was something else in his eyes, something unreadable. "Yeah," she replied, her voice quiet. Jack hesitated before stepping closer. "You've been distant. I know you're under pressure, but you don't have to carry all of this alone." Mia felt her chest tighten. "I don't know how to explain it. It's not just the rogues, it's everything. Feels like I'm being pulled in two different directions. Between the pack, my duty, and..." She trailed off, unwilling to say more. Jack studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "Between you and Chase?" Mia nodded, the truth she had been avoiding finally surfacing. "I don't know what to do about him. Every time I think I have a grip on this, it feels like I'm losing control." Jack's gaze softened and he took a step forward, his presence comforting but filled with a quiet tension. "I know it's complicated, but whatever happens, don't forget that we're a team. We've got each other's backs." Mia appreciated his words, but the weight of the situation was still heavy. "I just don't know if I can handle this. The rogues, Chase, everything. It's too much." Jack didn't respond immediately. Instead, he watched her carefully, his eyes scanning her face as if searching for something. Finally, he spoke again, his voice low but steady. "Mia, you're stronger than you realize. And you don't have to fight this alone. Whatever happens, we're in this together. All of us." There was something in his tone, something that made Mia stop and look at him more carefully. But before she could say anything, a sharp voice interrupted them. "Mia." Both she and Jack turned to see Alpha Nathan standing at the doorway, his face tight with urgency. "We've got a problem. You're going to want to hear this." Mia followed Nathan to his office, her thoughts scattered and her heart still racing from the conversation with Jack. What did he mean by "we're in this together"? Was he hinting at something more, or was he simply offering reassurance in the middle of the chaos? She didn't have time to dwell on it. Inside Nathan's office, Marcus and a few of the higher-ranking wolves were gathered, all with grim expressions on their faces. "What's going on?" Mia asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Nathan motioned for her to sit, and once she did, he began to explain. "We intercepted another message from the rogues. They're getting bolder. We know now that their plan isn't just about attacking the pack. They're targeting the Alpha's family." Mia's heart skipped a beat. "The Alpha's family? But why?" Marcus spoke up, his tone urgent. "They think that if they can take down the Alpha's family, they can break the pack's leadership. It's not just about weakening us. It's about dismantling our entire foundation." Mia's mind raced. The rogues were more dangerous than she had imagined. They weren't just trying to overtake the pack. They were aiming to completely destabilize it from the inside. Where are they targeting? She asked, trying to think through their next steps. Nathan's jaw tightened. They've set their sights on the Alphys family home, my sister's place. It's isolated and we're not sure how they found it, but we need to move fast. Mia nodded. I'll get my team ready. We'll help with the defense. Nathan hesitated before speaking again. Mia, you need to stay here. I can't risk you being exposed. We need you for the bigger fight. Mia bristled at his words. I'm not staying out of this fight. The rogues are after the Alphys family, but they're also after me. I'm not hiding. There was a tense silence as Nathan met her gaze. Finally, he relented. Fine. But you're on high alert. No unnecessary risks. Mia nodded, her mind already planning the next steps. There was no way she would sit idly by while her pack was under threat. That night, the pack mobilized in full force. Every wolf was on edge, aware of the danger that was closing in. Mia's role was clear: protect the Alphys family at all costs. She couldn't afford any distractions. But as the night wore on, the heaviness of the situation continued to weigh on her. In the midst of the preparations, she found herself facing the one person she had been avoiding: Chase. He stood by the door, his posture rigid and tense, eyes scanning the room as though every movement was a potential threat. His gaze landed on Mia, and for a brief moment their eyes locked. Mia, he said, his voice low. We need to talk. She hesitated but then nodded. Not now, Chase. We have bigger things to worry about. He took a step forward, his expression darkening. This is important. Whatever happens tonight, whatever comes next, we need to figure out where we stand. Mia felt her chest tighten. I don't have time for this, Chase. The night sky was thick with clouds, the air heavy with the promise of a storm. Every member of the Silver Moon Pack was on edge, their senses heightened as they prepared for what could be the most dangerous confrontation they had ever faced. Mia stood at the edge of the clearing where the Alphys family home lay in the distance. The trees around her rustled with an unnatural chill, a foreboding reminder of the rogues lurking just beyond the pack's reach. The Alphys family was under immediate threat, and Mia knew that if the rogues breached this first line of defense, it could shatter everything. Her mind raced, but there was a part of her, one that had never fully trusted Chase's intentions, urging her to stay alert, stay vigilant, and trust no one fully, not even him. Hours had passed since the pack began its defensive operations. Mia had been coordinating with Jack, who had taken charge of the perimeter security, and Marcus, who had been tasked with gathering intel on rogue movements. Despite the urgent nature of their mission, Mia could feel the tension building between her and Chase. They had yet to speak since their brief encounter, and she couldn't help but wonder what was going through his mind as they prepared for war. She found herself standing alone near the edge of the forest, her breath visible in the cold night air. She needed a moment to clear her mind before everything came crashing down. The sound of footsteps approaching broke her concentration, and she turned to find Chase walking toward her. He didn't say anything at first, his gaze locked on hers with an intensity that sent a ripple of unease down her spine. The weight of his unspoken words lingered in the air. Why are you out here alone? He asked, his voice quieter than usual. Mia crossed her arms defensively. I don't need anyone to babysit me, Chase. I'm fine. Chase's brow furrowed and he took a step closer, his expression softening. I know you're strong, Mia. But we're all in this together. You don't have to do this alone. Her heart clenched. The intensity of his gaze stirred something deep within her, but she couldn't afford to let herself be distracted now. Not when everything was at stake. I'm not alone, Mia replied firmly. And I'm not relying on anyone. The pack is all that matters right now. We fight for them. Chase opened his mouth to say something, but the sound of a distant howl interrupted their conversation. Mia's body stiffened, her senses on high alert. The howl wasn't a lone wolf. It was a signal. Without another word, Mia turned and sprinted toward the pack's gathering point. Chase hesitated only for a moment before following her. The clearing was in chaos when Mia arrived. The pack was already preparing to face the incoming rogues. Wolves of all ranks moved in formation, weapons at the ready, eyes sharp and filled with determination. Yet there was something different in the air now. The tension that had plagued them for days was about to erupt. Get ready. Nathan's voice rang out above the growing noise. We hold the line. No one gets through. Mia felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. She turned to find Jack, who was already at the front with a small group of warriors. The look in his eyes was resolute, but there was something else in his expression, something Mia couldn't quite place. Before she could approach him, a cold wind swept through the forest, and the sound of more howls echoed through the night. The rogues were closing in. "Stay close," Chase's voice was low behind her. Mia's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't turn to look at him. Instead, she gripped the handle of her weapon tighter, steeling herself for what was about to come. The rogues emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with feral hunger, teeth bared as they advanced in a sea of dark figures. They were organized, far more so than Mia had anticipated, and their leader stood at the forefront, a tall figure cloaked in shadow. "I don't know who you think you are, but you're trespassing on our territory," Nathan called out, his voice commanding. The rogue leader, a tall woman with sharp features, stepped forward, her smirk twisted. "This is only the beginning. Your pack is weak, Alpha. And you, Mia." She let out a low laugh that made Mia's skin crawl. "We've been waiting for you." The mention of her name sent a chill through Mia's body. This wasn't just about the pack. This was personal. The rogue leader knew her, and from the look in her eyes, Mia knew she had been marked for something darker. "What do you want?" Mia demanded, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. The rogue leader's eyes gleamed in the dim light, a look of twisted amusement crossing her face. "To end you. To end everything you've built here." Before Mia could react, the rogue pack surged forward, charging with a bloodthirsty roar. The clash of bodies, the snap of teeth, and the cries of battle filled the air. Mia fought instinctively, her training taking over as she shifted and joined the fight, her wolf taking control of her actions. In the heat of the battle, Mia barely registered the passing of time. Wolves clashed around her, but she kept her focus sharp. Her every movement was precise, her mind clear, driven by one goal: to protect the pack no matter the cost. But as the battle raged on, something shifted. A sudden pain erupted in her side, and Mia's body jolted as something sharp tore through her flesh. She let out a gasp of pain and spun around to face the rogue who had attacked her. It was the rogue leader. "You thought you could just run away from your past?" The rogue leader sneered, pulling back her bloodied claws. "You belong to us, Mia. You always have." Mia's vision blurred for a moment, but her anger burned bright. She couldn't let the rogues break her now. Not when the pack needed her. "Not anymore," Mia snarled, her voice filled with defiance. With a guttural roar, she launched herself at the rogue leader, the world around her slowing as adrenaline flooded her veins. She could feel the heat of battle, the shouts of her packmates, but all of it faded into the background. All that mattered was the rogue before her. They collided with a crash, claws and teeth flying. But Mia's fury fueled her strength, and with a final, decisive strike she managed to knock the rogue leader off her feet. The woman snarled in pain, but Mia didn't hesitate. She moved quickly, pinning the rogue leader beneath her. "I am no one's possession," Mia growled, her voice raw with the weight of the years she had spent hiding from her past. "You will never control me again." With a final, lethal move, she finished what had begun, and the rogue leader was no more. The battle raged on for hours, but with the rogue leader's defeat, the pack's resolve strengthened. Slowly, the rogues began to retreat, their numbers thinning under the relentless force of the Silver Moon pack. The howls of victory rang through the night air, but Mia's victory felt bittersweet. As the last of the rogues scattered into the woods, Mia collapsed to her knees, the blood from her wound staining the ground beneath her. She barely felt the pain, her mind still reeling from the confrontation. Her breaths were heavy, but as she lifted her gaze, she found herself face to face with Chase. "Mia." His voice was soft, filled with something she couldn't place. Relief? Worry? She managed a small, pained smile. "It's over." But as she said the words, Mia knew this wasn't the end. The rogues were just the beginning, and something far deeper was at work. A force that even the Silver Moon pack couldn't predict. And as the pack celebrated their hard-won victory, Mia realized that her journey had only just begun. The night had been long, and the aftermath of the battle left the Silver Moon pack in a state of uneasy victory. Mia sat in the pack's medical tent, her wounds being tended to by the pack's healer, Lila. The pain from the slash across her side was sharp, but it was the gnawing sense of uncertainty that weighed heavier on her heart. The rogue leader's cryptic words echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was only just beginning. As Lila applied a salve to the cut, Mia stared at the canvas walls of the tent, lost in thought. The pack had successfully driven back the rogues, but the victory felt hollow. The attack had been more calculated than they had expected, and the rogue leader's words about Mia, "You belong to us," continued to haunt her. There was something deeper here, something that tied her past to this conflict in a way she didn't fully understand. The flap of the tent suddenly lifted, and Mia turned to see Chase enter. His expression was strained, eyes filled with concern, but there was something else, something unreadable in the way he looked at her. The moments between them, ever since their last conversation, had been thick with unspoken tension. "How are you feeling?" Chase asked, his voice low but genuine. Mia gave him a small nod, her gaze steady despite the ache in her side. "I've been through worse." Chase didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press her further. Instead, he walked closer, taking a seat next to her. "We need to talk, Mia." Mia's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this conversation so soon. After the battle, after everything they had just been through, now wasn't the time. Yet she couldn't avoid it forever. "About what?" she asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Chase hesitated, then exhaled slowly as though gathering his thoughts. "I know we've been avoiding each other and I get it. But we need to be on the same page. The rogues. They're not just after the pack anymore. They're targeting you specifically. And I don't think you know why." Mia's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" "They've been targeting the pack from the start." Chase looked at her, his eyes full of a deep, unsettling intensity. "No, Mia. Vafti. They know you. And they've been following you for a reason. The rogue leader knew your name, your past. She spoke to you like you were someone she'd been waiting for." He paused, his jaw tightening. "There's something about you, about your bloodline, that they're hunting for." Mia recoiled slightly, her mind spinning. The pain in her side suddenly seemed distant as a new wave of confusion and fear washed over her. "What are you talking about?" "My bloodline? My family. They were never anything special. They were—" "Your family wasn't just any family, Mia," Chase interrupted gently, his voice soft but insistent. "I've been trying to piece this together, but it's hard to get the full story. But I know enough now to understand that the rogue's interest in you isn't random. Your family, your lineage has a connection to the rogue leader. A connection that goes deeper than we realized." Mia's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process his words. A connection to the rogue leader? Her thoughts raced to her parents, to the life she had left behind when she joined the Silver Moon Pack. She had always felt like an outsider in her own family, struggling with her own identity, trying to find where she belonged. But to hear that her bloodline held some kind of dark connection to the rogues, it didn't make sense. "Are you saying my family is somehow tied to this?" Mia asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain composed. Chase nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a quiet sorrow. "I think so. But it's more complicated than just your parents. This has something to do with you, Mia. With who you are, not just where you come from." Mia felt the world tilt beneath her. The revelation left her feeling unmoored, like the ground beneath her was suddenly unsteady. She had always felt like an outsider, but to think that her entire existence had some deeper purpose connected to the rogues, it was too much to absorb. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a familiar voice interrupted. "Mia." Jack's voice cut through the tension and he entered the tent, his eyes scanning the room before landing on her. "We've got more trouble. There's been another attack, but this one's different. We found something." Mia's heart clenched. She could see the worry in Jack's eyes, but there was something else, something serious in his tone. "What's happened?" she asked, her voice steady despite the growing storm in her chest. Jack exchanged a brief look with Chase before speaking. "We found more rogue tracks, but they lead back to the outskirts of your old town. The same place you left all those years ago." Mia's blood ran cold. "What? Why would they be there?" Jack's gaze shifted uneasily. "That's what we need to find out. There's something about that place, something tied to your past. We think that the rogues might be using it as a base of operations." Mia shook her head, disbelief filling her thoughts. "That's impossible. I haven't been back there in years. My family—" "Your family's connected to this, Mia," Jack interrupted gently. "We need to go there. You need to face whatever it is the rogues are after." Chase looked between them, his expression hardening. "I'll go with you. Whatever's waiting for us there, we'll face it together." Mia nodded, her heart racing. Everything was falling apart faster than she could understand it. She had left her past behind to find herself, to escape the abuse and the chaos of her family, only to realize that her past had followed her, had been waiting for her, and now it seemed poised to pull her back into the nightmare she had fled from. "Let's go then," Mia said, her voice steeled with determination. She wasn't going to run from this. Not again. The drive to her old town felt like an eternity. The roads that Mia once knew like the back of her hand now seemed alien, as though she had never truly belonged there. Her mind was clouded with unanswered questions. What did the rogues want with her? What was the connection to her family? And most importantly, why had they waited until now to make their move? The old town was smaller than she remembered, its streets quiet and almost abandoned. The houses were run down, many of them vacant, as if the years had slowly drained the life from the place. Mia's heart clenched as she passed the familiar streets, the memories flooding back. When they arrived at the outskirts of town, the air felt thick with anticipation. The scent of earth, old wood, and decay filled her senses. Mia stepped out of the car, her legs shaky as she gazed at the old, crumbling house in front of her, the place she had once called home. "We're here," Jack said quietly, his eyes scanning the area. The old house stood before them like a crumbling relic, its walls sagging with the weight of years. Time had not been kind to the place, yet Mia couldn't deny the pull of memories that crept up on her as she stepped across the threshold. The floorboards groaned under her weight, and the faint scent of dust and mildew filled the air. It was a place she never thought she'd return to, but now she had no choice. Chase, Jack, and Mia moved cautiously through the old, decaying structure. The floor creaked beneath their feet, and the sound echoed in the quiet, abandoned house. The shadows seemed to stretch long and sinister, as if hiding secrets too dark to be revealed. But Mia was no longer the terrified girl who had fled this place years ago. She was stronger, more resolved. "What exactly are we looking for?" Mia asked, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. She knew that whatever the rogues had been looking for, whatever ties they had to her past, it was here, somewhere in the house. "We'll know when we find it," Jack said, his voice low as he scanned the dark hallway. "Whatever the rogues are after, they've been here. There's a reason they came for you, Mia. We just have to figure out why." The three of them moved deeper into the house, the air growing colder as they approached the old living room. The walls were covered with peeling wallpaper, and the remnants of old furniture lay scattered around, abandoned and decayed. Mia felt a pang in her chest, a bitter reminder of the broken family she had left behind. She stopped suddenly, her breath catching as she saw something that made her blood run cold. A dark symbol carved into the wall near the fireplace. It was intricate but unmistakable. A crescent moon surrounded by sharp, jagged lines, a symbol she had seen before in the rogue's markings. This was no coincidence. Chase stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the symbol. "It's a sigil," he said quietly. "A mark of their pack. The rogues were here, Mia. And they left this for a reason." Mia's stomach twisted as she reached out to touch the symbol. The coldness of the stone beneath her fingertips sent a shiver through her body. The connection to her past was undeniable now. The rogues had been watching her, waiting for her to return. But why? Why here? Mia whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Before anyone could respond, Jack's sharp eyes caught something on the floor. He bent down, brushing aside the debris to reveal an old, worn journal. Its leather cover was cracked, its pages yellowed with age, but it was unmistakable. This was a part of her past that she had long forgotten. Her family's journal. "This could be the key," Jack said, holding it up for Mia to see. "This might explain everything." Mia's heart raced as she took the journal from him, the weight of it heavy in her hands. She opened the first page, her eyes scanning the faded words written in her mother's familiar handwriting. The entries were dated years ago, before Mia had left. But as she read, the words began to unravel a darker truth. March 17, 2003. "I fear we have made a terrible mistake. The pack has grown restless, and the curse of the moon is beginning to take its toll. Mia is special, she does not belong here. She belongs to something far darker, something that will haunt her if she does not escape. I fear the rogues will come for her soon, but I cannot stop them. She must leave before it's too late." Mia's hands trembled as she turned the page. Her heart pounded in her chest, a heavy, sinking feeling spreading through her. Her mother had known. She had known there was something different about Mia, something that made her a target. As Mia read further, she uncovered more troubling entries, ones that spoke of an ancient bloodline, a curse, and a power that lay dormant within her. She wasn't just a random victim of the rogues' attack, she was chosen. And the rogues had been watching her for years, waiting for the right moment to claim what they believed was theirs. Mia's breath hitched as she read the final, most chilling entry. I'm sorry, Mia. I have done what I can to protect you, but the bloodline cannot be erased. It is too strong. You were born for something greater, and the rogues will stop at nothing to have you. You must run. Never return. I have sealed this journal to keep the truth hidden from them. But I fear they already know. Find your way. Trust no one. Mia dropped the journal, her chest tight with disbelief and fear. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. The rogues had always been after her, and her family had known the truth. They hadn't just abandoned her. They had protected her in their own twisted way. But Mia couldn't ignore the truth now. She wasn't just an innocent bystander. She was a part of this mess, a central piece in a battle she hadn't asked for. I don't understand, Mia whispered, her voice trembling. What am I supposed to do with this? How can I fight something I don't even understand? Chase stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was grounding, his presence reassuring. We fight together. You don't have to carry this burden alone, Mia. We're in this as a pack. And whatever this power is, we'll face it head-on. Mia nodded slowly, trying to steady the storm raging inside her. But as the words from her mother's journal swirled in her mind, one thing was clear. The rogues were not just after her. They wanted to control the power within her, a power she hadn't even begun to understand. And now, with the knowledge of her bloodline out in the open, the stakes had never been higher. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the doorway, and Mia's heart skipped a beat. She turned quickly, her senses alert. There in the shadows stood a figure, a tall, imposing man with dark, piercing eyes. It was the rogue leader. You've come to learn the truth, Mia, the rogue leader said, her voice cold and venomous. But you've only scratched the surface. The power you possess, it belongs to us. And now it's time for you to come home. Chase stepped in front of Mia, his body tense. Not today, he snarled. The rogue leader's lips curled into a sinister smile. We'll see about that. Mia's pulse quickened as she stood between Chase and the rogue leader. This was it, the moment her past and future collided. The battle for control of her destiny was about to begin. And Mia knew deep down that she would have to make a choice. One that could change everything. As the rogue leader took a step forward, her eyes locked on Mia's, a challenge in her gaze. Mia's heart pounded. There was no going back now. The fight was here, and she would face it not just for herself but for the pack, for everything she had fought for. Chapter 15. The Final Choice. The air crackled with tension, thick with anticipation. Mia stood tall, her pulse racing, every muscle in her body alert and ready. Chase remained by her side, his presence a steadying force. They were in this together, no matter what the rogue leader threw their way. You can't have me, Mia said, her voice strong despite the fear that churned inside her. I'm not your pawn. The rogue leader's eyes flashed with rage. You are no more than a weapon, Mia. You always have been. It's just a matter of time before you realize it. Mia's hand clenched into a fist, and she turned her gaze to the floor, focusing on the pulse of energy that seemed to hum beneath her skin. The power her mother had spoken of, the power that had been dormant within her all these years, was stirring inside her. Mia felt the weight of it, the dangerous allure, and she knew this was the moment that would define her. The rogue leader lunged, her claws slashing through the air with deadly precision. Mia's instincts kicked in, and she shifted, her body morphing into her wolf form in the blink of an eye. The pack had trained her for this. Her transformation was fluid, controlled. She met the rogue leader's attack head-on, their wolves colliding in a whirlwind of fury. The force of the impact shook the ground beneath them, but Mia didn't falter. This was her fight, her destiny, and she would not let the rogue leader take what was hers. Chase was right beside her, his wolf form a blur of speed and power as he fought off the rogue's minions. But Mia focused on the rogue leader, the woman who had been hunting her for years. They clashed again, their bodies spinning in a violent dance, each trying to overpower the other. And then, in the heat of the battle, Mia felt it. The power inside her surged, an uncontrollable force that erupted with a roar. She could feel the energy swirling around her, pouring out of her in a torrent. The rogue leader faltered, taken aback by the raw strength that Mia had unleashed. "This is my power," Mia growled, her voice echoing in the night. "And I won't let." The night air seemed to hold its breath as Mia faced the rogue leader, her wolf's golden eyes glowing with a light that spoke of something ancient, something powerful. The chaos of the battle faded into the background. This moment was between her and the one who had tormented her existence. The rogue leader circled, her black fur bristling, her piercing eyes watching Mia with calculated menace. "You don't even know what you're capable of, girl," she sneered. "That power will consume you before you learn to control it." Mia growled low, her stance unwavering. "Maybe. But I'd rather burn than let you take what's mine." The rogue leader lunged again, faster this time, her claws aiming for Mia's throat. But Mia was ready. With a burst of speed she sidestepped, her wolf's form moving with a grace that even she hadn't known she possessed. The rogue stumbled, and in that brief second Mia struck, slamming her weight into the rogue leader and sending her sprawling. From the corner of her eye, Mia saw Chase and Jack holding the line against the remaining rogues, their movements fierce and determined. But the tide of the battle hinged on this fight. Mia knew she had to end it. Now, drawing on the strange power humming within her, Mia shifted back into her human form, standing tall and defiant. Her hands glowed faintly, the energy within her sparking like lightning. The rogue leader followed suit, morphing back into her human form. Her dark eyes bore into Mia, full of hatred and fear. "You don't know what you're doing," the rogue leader hissed. "That power belongs to us. It's in your blood. You can't fight it." Mia clenched her fists, the glowing light intensifying. "You're wrong. This power doesn't belong to you or anyone else. It's mine to control, and I'll decide what to do with it." The rogue leader laughed, a cruel sound. "Then let's see if you're strong enough to prove it." The final clash was unlike anything Mia had ever experienced. The rogue leader attacked with raw ferocity, her movements quick and deadly. But Mia was no longer the scared girl who had run from her past. She met every strike with precision, the power inside her surging with every blow. Finally Mia saw her opening. She raised her hands, channeling the energy that coursed through her veins. A bright, blinding light erupted from her palms, engulfing the rogue leader in a torrent of pure force. The rogue screamed, her voice echoing into the night, and then silence. When the light faded, the rogue leader lay motionless on the ground. The remaining rogues, sensing their leader's defeat, fled into the forest, their howls fading into the distance. Mia collapsed to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Chase was by her side in an instant, his arms wrapping around her as she trembled. "You did it," he whispered, his voice full of awe. "You ended it." Mia looked up at him, her golden eyes still glowing faintly. "It's over," she said, her voice steady. "But it doesn't feel like a victory." Jack approached, his expression grim. "She wasn't wrong, Mia. That power, it's dangerous. You'll need to learn how to control it. But tonight, you proved that you're stronger than they ever imagined." Mia nodded, her gaze shifting to the horizon where the first rays of dawn were breaking. The battle was won, but she knew her journey was far from over. The power inside her was a part of her now, and she would have to face its challenges head-on. In the days that followed, the pack began to rebuild. Chase stayed by Mia's side, his support unwavering. Their bond, once broken by rejection and pain, had become something deeper, something unbreakable. Jack, ever the loyal friend, promised to help Mia uncover the mysteries of her bloodline and her newfound power. As Mia stood at the edge of the forest, the morning sun warming her skin, she felt a sense of hope for the first time in years. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She had chosen her own path, and she would walk it with strength, courage, and the people who stood by her. And though forgiveness for the pain she had endured was still far away, she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer the girl who ran. She was a fighter, a leader, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Mia turned to Chase, who stood silently beside her. "This isn't the end," she said softly, a small smile playing on her lips. Chase returned the smile, his eyes filled with pride and affection. "No," he agreed. "It's just the beginning." Together they walked back toward the pack, the dawn of a new chapter awaiting them.